Welcome to the live stream. Today, I'm going over some government job questions and answers. So any questions that you have about government jobs, USAJobs.gov, anything like that, feel free to drop it into the chat. First, I'm going to go over some of the questions that were previously asked. But if you do have a question, make sure you put a capital Q before your question so I know it's for me. All right, so the first question. This one's from Lovingly Lanice. She asked, does the applicant receive notification regardless if they were selected or not? So unfortunately, they do not always. It is not USA Jobs' responsibility necessarily to update the status, but every federal agency has their own human resource section. So the human resource specialist is the one that is supposed to go in there and update your status. Now, obviously, this doesn't always happen. I would say this is like a 50% chance of this actually occurring. So you'll find yourself having to look at the job announcement, scroll all the way down, look at the point of contact information, send an email, or if there's a phone number, call it and see if you can get a status update. There's some people that actually, they'll get an interview request or they'll even get a job offer, and their status on USA Jobs, it still says received. There's been no update to their status. So it's really frustrating. It's one of the big critiques or criticisms when looking at USA Jobs, because they do not always update your status. All right, so the next question. What is the longest amount of time it can take for an applicant to be invited for an interview after the job announcement closes? So I would say, roughly speaking, about 2 or 3 weeks. But this isn't guaranteed. So there's been cases where you actually get the interview request the next day after it closes, or the next 2 days after it closes. And there are other times it could take months. But I think if you're looking for an average, if you're looking for a rough estimate, I would say between 2 and 3 weeks. But don't hold your breath and wait for them to contact you. Keep applying. I would suggest to anybody who's in their job search, do not get held up on one job announcement because you're referred or you're waiting for the interview to come in. Just keep applying to the job series that you're eligible and qualified for. All right. Next question is from CE user 3555, who asks, why is the government using outdated software for electronic health records? And why is the government unable to match salaries in the private sector? So the government using outdated software is a big issue across the entire federal government. And this is because a lot of times when agencies have their IT budget, it largely goes into maintenance. It does not go so much into new systems. They spend most of their money on maintenance. Now, depending on the agency, they might place different priorities. But you can look at articles where you will find certain agencies in the government using technology from 30, 40, 50 years ago sometimes. So it is a big issue. Now, as far as about matching salaries with the private sector, if you do a side-by-side comparison and you look at the private sector and the public sector, on average, government employees are getting more. They're receiving more pay and compensation on the federal side. Now, there are industries like law, medicine, engineering, IT, cybersecurity, where the private sectors are going to pay more. It is hard to have a new pay band or increase the pay because federal agencies, they have to obey OPM, and they would need an exception from OPM in order to pay more. Now, like I did a video ago or so, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I talked about air traffic controllers. That is an example of a pay band that's not on the GS pay band, so they can actually pay them more. So I believe it tops out at $221,000 a year. And then we also talked about the special salary rate. So there are initiatives to try to increase the pay of certain professionals so that they can compete a little bit more with the private sector. But I think the private sector is always going to pay a little bit more when it comes to highly focused talent. When it comes to that kind of demand, they're going to pay more. And another thing you have to consider is that when the government is trying to increase salaries, it's taxpayer money. So there's more scrutiny. There's more eyeballs on that. All right, let me take a look at the chat. We who are about to die salute you. Hey, I hope you're doing great. Thanks for joining. I know you were here on the last one, so thanks for showing up again. Clint. Good morning, Clint. Good morning, Bobcat. Congratulations on your tentative job offer. Excited to hear about that one. All right. Let's take it back to the questions. Next, J077 Junior AMO asks, Armand, as a transitioning service member, if I committed to a final job offer, can I still accept another offer from another government agency looking to get the highest GS level possible? Thank you. Yes, you can definitely do that. So, hypothetically, an example, if you get a GS11 job offer and you show up and start working first day, second day comes, you have another job offer, but this time it's for a GS12. You can accept that, but you have to be aware that in certain cases, time and grade does apply. Meaning that if you're a GS11 and you work there 2 days, you have 2 days time and grade as a GS11. So when you accept another job offer, then you have to make sure it's from a different hiring path. So if you were brought on to an agency as a GS11 as a veteran, then as a GS12, there's a job offer, but it's also the same path. It's still veteran. Then you're not going to be able to take it because you have to follow time and grade rules. If it's open to the public, then you don't have to do that. Or if it's Schedule A, or you're using your Peace Corps time, then you can accept it. This exact thing happened to me. I left the military. I had one GS grade offer. I started working for 2 weeks. And after those 2 weeks, I had another GS grade offer. And people encounter this a lot because people, when they're looking for a job, they apply multiple times. So they take multiple interviews and they can end up with multiple job offers. So I had a higher GS grade job offer come in that I wanted to take. And everything was going great. I thought I was actually going to get it. And then at the last minute, they told me, hey, we can't take you. This is not an open to public position. This was a veteran preference position. And they asked me, do you have 30% disability? Because we can get you in that way. And at the time, I didn't. So I said no. And they're like, well, there's nothing we can do. So I had to reject the job offer, which was incredibly discouraging. All right. Hey, talking about the GS job offer, I understand you're trying to get the highest pay possible. And I would encourage everyone to do that. Like, don't just focus on one GS grade. You should have a range. So if you're looking for government work, depending on your background, it could be GS9 to GS12. So you're applying for anything and everything in the job series between GS9 and GS12 in order to try to get the highest pay. And talking about pay, a lot of you guys probably heard that the president is proposing a 5.2% pay raise. And this is contrary to a lot of people in Congress. There's a lot of Democrats in Congress that would like to see an 8%. It's a little over 8%. So it would be 4% on base and then 4%, 4.5% on locality. So combined, it would be over an 8% raise. But right now, the president's thinking about 5.2%. I think really towards the end of the year, they're probably going to agree to something similar to what we just received in 2023, right? So in 2024, probably anything between 4, 5, 5.5. That's probably what, is more realistic. All right, let's see. KK. Hey, good morning, KK. Hope you're doing great. All right, next question. Utasami asked, what if your resume is on point, but you do not select expert proficiency for the job questions? So that's on the self-assessment. If you're not clicking expert proficiency. In the past, I had a terrible resume, but I selected expert on all the questions and they were referred. Yeah. Okay. So, one of the things I highly encourage and suggest people that are looking for a government job is to click that you're an expert when it asks you the questions. What is your experience when analyzing data? And then you have 4 or 5 options. The last option, usually, not always, is I am considered an expert in this area, this specialized area, or whatever it is. I would suggest clicking that as much as you can, as long as you feel comfortable doing this. You don't want to lie, obviously. So if you find yourself not comfortable enough to mark down expert on the majority of those self-assessment questions, you're going to remove yourself from eligibility. So you are going to disqualify yourself before that application reaches a human resource specialist. So if you find yourself doing that, then I would not continue to apply to that job. You want to be confident in the job that you're applying for, that it matches up with your skills, and that you can confidently put down that you're an expert. And this also ties into people not really valuing the experience and skills that they have. So you need to understand, you need to do like a self, uh, what you call it? You need to do a self evaluation and understand what skills you actually have. So when they ask you, do you have experience teaching? Do you have experience analyzing? Do you have experience evaluating? You can confidently put, yes, I do. I've been doing it for the last 4, 5, 6 years, and I am an expert. And you mark down expert. Uh, so yeah, you can have a horrible resume, and if you keep on clicking expert, yeah, you're probably going to make it to the human resource specialist, and then they'll probably either refer you or not refer you. Probably not refer you if your resume is completely irrelevant to the actual job or you don't have enough experience. All right, good question. Next question. D. Michelle asks, I have been noticing that a lot of jobs are being posted over and over. Why? Also, they are only open a week or less. Okay. So there's a few reasons why jobs are posted over and over again. One of the reasons is the human resource specialist made an error when they were generating the job announcement. Usually, when HR does the job announcement, they are also with a subject matter expert so they can make sure that everything is covered for that job. Now, oftentimes they might miss something, right? They miss a skill or they're misrepresenting something. This is usually because people are copying and pasting. So they misrepresent something. And then in order to cover themselves legally, they have to take the job announcement down, they have to make the correction, and then they repost it. Another reason is the hiring manager interviewed a group of people. So this actually happened not too long ago. The hiring manager, they do not get to select who they're interviewing, or they do not get to select who's referred to them. So HR sends them the list. And then from there, they identify the people that they're going to interview. Usually it's no more than 4 or 6 people, maybe 7 people. They interview them. And often cases when you're interviewing these people, you're like, no, these are the wrong people. These are not the right people I want on my team. And in that case, you don't select anybody. So I have seen this done where the hiring manager brings on 4 or 5 people, interview, no one's good. Then they bring on another group, and then they say, no one's good. And then it takes the third iteration for people to actually, for the 4 or 5 people to be interviewed, for the human resource manager to say, okay, that is who I actually want. You do not want to make a hastily decision when you're selecting someone to be a part of your team, right? Because if they make it through probation, they're pretty much there to stay for a while. So you want to make sure you're hiring the right person. But as a caveat, also, when it comes down to that, there are times where they have someone in mind. I hate to say that, but that's true. They will have someone in mind and they have a job announcement. You know, if they're doing the right thing, I think they should do this as an internal announcement so that not everyone's getting their hopes up. They can list an internal job announcement for internal promotion. And then they put it out there. So everyone in that agency is competing for that job. They word it in such a way where they have one person in mind, but everyone else in that agency, they can still compete for it. Now, if that person doesn't get selected, it's been done in the past where they'll cancel it because they didn't get selected. If they're referred to the hiring manager, they will get selected. But what happens sometimes is HR doesn't refer so HR isn't in on it, right? HR is just referring the best. And if the person who's supposed to get hired isn't referred, well, then they just say, hey, no one's good enough, cancel it, repost it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's see how we're looking on chat. We have a question from Dio. If I got referrals, how long would it take to get an interview? Well, this is similar to the previous question. So if you get a referral, when you get referrals, you could really, there's a large time span where you can actually get an interview. But a lot of times you will not get an interview at all. What I have seen recently, or in the last couple of years, what I have seen is that when you're referred, let's say that you apply and you were referred out of all your applications, you're referred 10 times. What I have seen is that most people experience a 20 to 30% turnover rate when it comes to converting the referrals to interviews. So if you have 10 referrals, out of those 10, I would say most people get 2 to 3 interviews from those 10 referrals. Now, when it comes to getting interviews from the referrals, You need to have a strong resume to get the referral, right? In order to get referred, you have to have a strong resume. It has to be relevant. Now, in order to get the interview, it's once again, it goes right back to your resume. But now you're competing amongst a smaller selected uh, applicants. So you are relying upon the strength and weight of that resume to take you from everybody to the referred pile. And then from the referred pile, they're looking at your resume again to take you into the interview pile. And then once you get to the interview pile, then usually your resume has nothing to do with it. And it's about how you're able to communicate, articulate your skills and value. And then that's how you kind of get the job offer from that point. All right, another question from Joseph Walsh. Can Schedule A be used for disabilities like asthma or arthritis? So, it really comes down to the severity of how bad your arthritis or asthma is. With Schedule A, it's between you and your healthcare provider. If your healthcare provider, whether it's a doctor, a PA, or a nurse, if they feel that your condition is severe enough, they can fill out a form. You give them the form, they can fill it out and they sign it. And in that form, it is not very specific on exactly what your ailment is or what your disability is. It simply states that you qualify. Based on that letter, you have a disability that qualifies, and you can use that Schedule A letter, upload it, and then you can go through that hiring path. And I believe I talked about that last time. With Schedule A, that opens you up to like 2 or 3,000 more jobs across the country. And you can go through a coordinator, and there's some jobs that are not even posted that you can qualify for based on that. That's a non-competitive appointment. And because it's non-competitive, you're going to be entering into the accepted service for 12 to 24 months. And then from there, it can convert to the competitive service. So if you feel like you do have a disability, if you genuinely feel like that, then I would probably research it some more, and then I would go schedule an appointment with your medical provider, bring the form, and see, take it from there. See if you can actually, if you qualify, if you're eligible for that. Okay, Bobcat Stillwell question: was it difficult to learn processes your first year working at the federal government? Yes, it was difficult because it's new. I went from federal agency, and it was still difficult because every agency has their own process. Now, the best thing that you can do in the situation is just understand and accept, hey, this is difficult. What I'm about to step into is difficult, and that's fine. And then, aside from that, is to find somebody who's friendly at your agency and start shadowing them and start asking a lot of questions, being curious. And that's going to work a lot of different ways. That's going to help you get exposure to the process and the systems, and it also starts to build goodwill because once you ask somebody, hey, can I shadow you? Basically you're saying, hey, you're competent and I can learn from you. And that's like a compliment, right? So you're starting to generate some of that goodwill capital. It's a win-win. Find someone that you can shadow, take it slow. People are going to understand that you're new. Everyone understands the new person, right? That guy is new. And so they're not going to, most offices, there's other offices that are super high tempo, but most offices are going to be understanding and they're going to try to help you as much as possible. Um, Doy says, how many people get referred to a job usually? It depends on how many people qualify. So, or excuse me, it depends on how many people apply. So, the DC area, everyone assumes in the DC area, there's tons of people, there's tons of competition, everyone's applying for every single job. Well, that's not true. There are a lot of people, but there's an agency recently that the job was open to everybody. It was a 0343, an analyst position. And there were 3 people that applied. There was just 3. I couldn't believe it. I can't believe that only 3 people actually applied to this. Out of the 3, 2, 2 of them were interviewed. And they were both horrible, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. They were both horrible. One of them was selected. Unbelievable. So, it just depends. Sometimes there's thousands of people that apply. Roughly speaking, I would say, if I were forced to give you a number, I would say 20% are referred. And that in the other case I just gave you, it was 66% because it was 2 out of 3. Okay. Let's see. Hey, if you have a question, please put a Q in front of the question so I know it's for me. All right, I'm going to get back to. Okay. Ash so 7 asked, how How do you negotiate your step once a tentative job offer is extended? The way that you negotiate your step is the same individual that emailed you for the job offer, the same person that emailed you and say, "Hey, congratulations, this is a tentative job offer. Please accept or reject." The same person who does that, you reply to them. And the main way is to submit a memo that shows that you are highly qualified, right? And in that memo, you're showing that you have a lot of experience that's relevant to the job, and you're also showing your education. And there's a lot of different ways that you can break it down, right? I think I did a video on this in the past, but there's many ways that you can go about it, but it all comes down to that memo. That's kind of like your formal negotiation request. Now, another way to do it is like if you're making more money now and you know you're going to take a pay cut if you accept a job offer, then you can show them, and by them I mean the HR specialist, you can show your last pay stub or your earnings statement, and you can say, "Hey, listen, I'm making 85,000 a year, and if I accept this GS9, that's a $20,000 pay cut. Can you set me at the step 8 or the step 9 level?" And a lot of HR specialists will consider it. It's not on them. They're going to have to take it back and see what they can do. But not every federal agency has to negotiate with you. I think, roughly speaking, over half of them will do it. They'll negotiate with you, especially if it has merit, right? If you have a ton of experience, and they can see that raising the pay is the most fair thing to do. Now, there was a talk or there was a comment recently that says you could have your job offer pulled if you negotiate your salary. Now, that's not true, and it is true. There's nuance to that answer. When it comes to negotiating your pay, I would suggest you do it one time. You ask, "Hey, in order to match my pay, I need a step 4, or because of my experience, I'm looking for a step 5, and here's the memo." And once they say no, then leave it alone. Do not continue. If you continue and say, "No, no, no, this is a hard stand. I'm taking a step 5 or nothing else. I want to talk to the hiring manager." You can do that, but you're putting yourself at risk for having the job offer removed. So unless you plan on legitimately walking away from that job offer, I would not do that. So just try it the one time. So a lot of times the federal agency, they'll say, "Man, we had 4 or 5 highly qualified people. So this person doesn't want the job. We'll just give it to the runner up." They'll identify the number 2, and they're like, "We'll just give the job to the number 2 since we can't compromise with the number 1." All right, let's look at the chat again. KK asks, "I just started in January and I would like to apply for a higher position. When is too soon? Thank you for your wisdom and service." Oh, thank you, KK. Appreciate that. You started in January? Well, if you started in January, if you want to follow the time and grade rules, if that's the only path that's open to you, then you have to wait 12 months. So I don't know what GS grade you are now, but let's say you're a GS 12. You would have to wait 12 months time and grade, and then you will apply for a promotion. Now, if you qualify for other pathways, for instance, if you're a disabled veteran, for example, then you can use your previous experience and get a higher grade position. So if you're a GS 12 now, you can take your this is if you have military experience. You could take your military experience and you can actually apply for a GS 14 and make it clear that you are competing from a separate hiring path, right? Or open to the public. Of course, open to the public, you can do that as well. And you can use previous experience, but you cannot use the experience that you have as a GS 12, use that experience to get a 13 unless you have 12 months. You're going to have to follow time and grade. Okay, let's see. I have applied to 5 jobs in less than a month, and those 5 jobs have been canceled. Wow. That is a coincidence. I don't know why those 5 jobs were they in the same agency? Were they in the same office? Were they in the same department? I guess I would need more information on that one. Okay. Here's a question from Robert Lunsford. "I am leaving active duty after 15 years of service. My understanding is I can buy back my 15 years of active time then do a minimum of 5 years in a federal job and still get a pension in my 60s? You're right, Robert. You can. You can definitely do that. All you need to do to qualify for a pension in the government is 5 years. You can buy back your time. How much time you have? You have 15. So you can buy back 15 years. So after 5 years, you would be eligible for a 20-year pension. Now, you can get that at 62, or depending on some other criteria, you can actually even get that at 57. It just depends on, how old you are and how much service you have and all these other questions. And the calculation is pretty simple. So let's say you're GS13 in DC. If you're GS13 step 5, let's say you're making 100, what is that? 130,000. You take your high 3, let's say it's 130,000 a year. You take your high 3 and then you multiply it by years. So in your case it would be 20. And then you multiply it by your percent. So if you're taking your pension at 62, then it would be 1.1%. If you do that formula, high 3 pay times years of service times 1.1%, that would give you how much money you can expect every year. Divide that by 12 and you can see what your monthly pension amount would be roughly. So that's something that you can do. But yeah, I do recommend most people that leave the military before they hit their 20 years to buy back their time if it makes sense for them, because they're going to get credited that. And it's great to increase your pension. All right, next question. We who are about to die salute you ask, why is the Center of Medicaid and Medicare Services, CMS, so backwards when it comes to budgeting? Why do they hire or contract the bare minimum amount of people and expect them to adapt to large workloads and then cut the budgets from the states when all those tasks cannot be completed? Okay. The CMS is with the HHS, the Health and Human Services. I don't know too much about Health and Human Services when it comes to their budgeting. Somebody maybe in their CFO office, they would probably be a better person to ask when it comes to that. Now, when it comes to contracting, when it comes to contracting, um, the dynamic between contractors and the government, if you're looking at it from the budgeting side, large contractors, they give this is my opinion. They give substantial campaign contributions to politicians. The money comes from the contracts that are awarded from the government. So you have these humongous contractors with billions of dollars, and if they're donating and contributing to political campaigns, they will find themselves in a position oftentimes where they're awarded large contracts. So there's a lot of contractors attached to your agency. And when there's not a need for them, or if they're trying to, if they're trying to trim the budget or reallocate money, you can see them come and go, ebb and flow. So there's been that relationship for decades when it comes to contractors and government employees. Also, contractors, you will find in most agencies that they do a lot of the technical work, and so they have different roles when it comes to contractors and government employees. So it's a very interesting relationship. But yeah, for the first question, I don't really know there. I couldn't answer that question. Another question that people have been having is about FERS. So FERS, understand when we're talking about federal government retirement, you're talking about three things. You're talking about the thrift savings plan, you're talking about Social Security, and you're talking about the FERS defined pension benefit. When it comes to the FERS defined pension benefit, government employees that were hired in 2014 or later, so anytime in the last 9 years, if you're coming onto the government, you are paying 4.4%. You're contributing 4.4% of your earnings, of your salary, to that defined pension benefit plan. And a lot of people don't understand that. You don't realize it until you look at your earnings statement and you're like, hey, what is this 4.4% coming out? Before this, I think it was in 2013, it was under 4%. It was like 3%. And before that, it was even below a percent. It was like 0.08. So government employees are now contributing more to their pension. And the agency, they contribute about 15 to 17%, something like that. So that's what's making up your pension. And I think some people were getting confused with that because the thrift savings plan, they're only doing, what is it, like 5%, right? So you can contribute 5%, you get the match, which is like it's one and then plus 4%. And then you can keep contributing, but you're not going to get anything over the 5%. So they're different things. All right, let's see. All right. Hey, I really appreciate everyone being here. Thanks a lot. Question: do you still work for the government? Yes, I do. Why did you decide to do YouTube as a career? Well, it's not really a career right now. I've been doing this for a year and a half. And the main reason I wanted to do this initially is because when I left the military, I wanted to get a government job, and the reason there were so many resources, but they were scattered. Right, there was a book over here, there was an online article over here, there was somebody who knew what they were talking about over there, and I thought like, hey, if we can consolidate all of this stuff in order to provide like more resources that are easily accessible, that would be ideal. So when I make a lot of the videos, when I make them, I'm making it for me. When I was going through the transition process to get a government job, when I was going through that process, I'm like, what did I want to know? Oh, I wanted to know this, I wanted to know that. And I'm still very interested in what it takes. Or I'm interested in job series. I'm interested in how the federal agencies are like transforming and all the different type of transitions and the pay. So all that stuff just it still like resonates. It deeply interests me. So I find myself doing it more. So that's the main thing. Tentative. Um, that was the wording the state government used. I thought it was not a clean offer, and I had tentative on what? Yeah, I don't know. Tentative is basically it's dependent, right? So that's that's the way of someone saying it depends. But it's based on the context. I really don't know. Question: once you are in a government job, does bureaucracy get in the way of a promotion? Um, yeah. So that depends. It can. A lot of things can impact it, but generally speaking, it depends on your area. It depends on your job series. It depends on your agency. It depends on your supervisor. My God, we can just keep on going on how it depends. But generally speaking, I would say no. Generally speaking, you can get promoted. You can move around. This is the thing. So you know your experience. You know your background. Take your experience that you have right now, and if you know you have the experience, like right now, to be a GS 13, GS 14, you could see yourself in there. And this comes by doing research, looking at the OPM Jobs Series handbook, speaking with other people. That's probably one of the biggest keys. Go on LinkedIn, make connections, speak with other people, and see what their background is. If you talk to a GS 14 or GS 15 and you understand their background, you're like, wait a minute, my background's the same, or it's even stronger. Then you know you can get to that level. And if you're a GS 9 right now, you can just move on through the ranks. Every 12 months, apply for a promotion. Every 12 months, apply for a promotion. It's not going to be in your same office. You're going to have to jump around to different offices unless you have a ladder position. And you might have to jump around to different agencies. You might have to move to another state. But if you're like if that's the objective, like if that's the mission is GS 15 and you're a GS 9. And I'm like, I want to get a GS 15 in the next 5 years or six, whatever it is. If that's the mission, then yeah, you can definitely do that. It's going to be a little uncomfortable, right? Because you're constantly applying. Some people, when they see that you're jumping every 12 months, they're going to look at you like a job hopper. Not everyone's going to do that, but what I would say is do what's in your best interest, have a plan lined out, and then just pursue it aggressively. I don't think it's that hard, generally speaking, right? Location has a huge part of it. All right. We who are about to die salute you. I can tell you do not like CMS. Okay. I am seeing the question asked if you previously worked at an accepted service, like the post office. What does that mean? So, accepted service means that the agency did not have to follow OPM jobs, the OPM's hiring rules. There was a way that they could circumvent and get away from the rules. Accepted service, like the post office, they have their own hiring process. And The same thing with the CIA, the FBI, the ATF, all of those agencies. A lot of people a lot of agencies under Department of Justice, they do not hire in the competitive service. They hire more in the accepted service. The accepted service, you generally receive the same benefits as somebody in the competitive service. It's just that you cannot compete for the competitive service jobs. And about half of all the jobs in the government are competitive service. Now, there are interagency agreements where you can, depending on what agency you are, if your agency has an interagency agreement, you can compete for competitive service. So it just really reduces a lot of your opportunities if you stay in the accepted service. Now, if you're a veteran and you did 3 years in the military, you are honorably discharged, then you can compete for competitive service jobs. So I hope that helps. Let's see. If I currently make close to GS 14 step 6 and I'm interested in a GS 13 remote position. Oh, this is LMAC. LMAC's asking this question. Thank you for joining, LMAC. If I currently make close to GS 14 step 6 and I'm interested in a GS 13 remote position, can I do a superior qualification letter to match my current salary? Yes. You can, like I mentioned earlier, you can take it one or two different ways. You can show them your earning statement. You can show them that you are earning a lot more than if you apply for a GS 13 and you're extended a GS 13 tentative job offer. You can show, hey, listen, I make a lot more than a GS 13 step 1. In fact, my salary is more equivalent to a GS 13 step 10. And based on that little interaction through the email between you and the human resource specialist, you can receive a higher step level. It's not guaranteed. The second thing you can do is mention that you're superiorly qualified with the memo and show all of the experience that you have, all of the education, the certifications, the projects that you worked on, all of the reasons why GS 13 step 1 would not be fair, for lack of a better words. Your experience and skills equate to a higher step level. Those are two different ways that you can get a higher step level. And I wouldn't say it's once again, this is not guaranteed, but it's worth the effort. So if you want to get into the government and you're just applying for GS 14s and you're not having very much success, you can open it up to 13s with in the back of your mind knowing that you're going to attempt. But just understand that when the job offers come in, they're not forced to do it. So as long as you have those expectations, then I think you'll be fine. All right, state government. Let's see what else we have here. I'm retiring this is from CGS Cafe. He asked, I'm retiring from the military in July next year. When should I submit applications for a GS job? Okay, July of next year. What I would do in that situation, I would do it 6 months before you leave. 6 months before you leave, I would start applying. The reason why, I don't know if you're enlisted or if you're commissioned. If you're enlisted, you can start working when you're on terminal leave if you want to. So when you start terminal leave that day, you can start working in your government job. So for terminal leave, this person's retiring. So usually you'll have what, two months of leave, and then you'll have like 2 weeks of permissive TDY, something like that, 2 or 3 months, right? So let's just say you have 3 months. If you're retiring in July, what does that put you back in April? That means you can start working in April. That means you should start applying in February or even January. What it will come down to in your situation is your statement of service letter. Your statement of service letter is signed by the first 05 in your chain of command. What you want to do with your statement of service is have it reflect the date that your terminal leave starts. The way most people do the letters is they have it the date where they're officially retired. And that's a 3-month difference between when you are officially retired and when you start your terminal leave. It's a 2 to 3 month difference. So I would have the date on when you start your terminal leave because that's when you can start working. If your O5 feels comfortable signing off on a memo like that, that will put you 3 months ahead of schedule. So that's what I did. The reason I'm telling you this is because that's what I did. Okay. Okay. All right, let's start wrapping this stream up. Thanks everyone for being here. I really appreciate the support. It means a lot. And then if you could put it in the chat or even put it in the comments once the stream's over, if you could let me know what type of videos you think that not just you, of course, but also other people you think they would benefit, like some of the questions that people have in order to give them an advantage on trying to get a government job. I can only do so many videos on resumes and interviews. And after a while, I pretty much covered the topic. So I've been leaning more towards, or I've been thinking about leaning more towards people's actual experience. So I have a lot of acquaintances and friends that work in agencies, and I've been asking them if I could ask them questions. Most of them do not want to be identified. So they're going to give me the interview, so to speak, but they do not want their name or or face anywhere in the video. So I have someone in DoD, I have somebody in FEMA, and then not just that, I was also thinking about contractors because a lot of people are interested in contracting work too. So I have somebody in Leidos, and then I have somebody in khaki. I was thinking about doing those experiences so that people can really see what it's like if they work in that agency. Maybe do some pros and cons, things like I did a video like that on USDA, and I did another one on Booz and Allen, and it seemed like people were actually benefiting from that information. So, let me know if that's something that you guys would like to see. Hey, also at the bottom, there should be links at the bottom. If you need additional help, if you need, there's a link where you can schedule a call. There's a link where you could take a course. I give you video instruction on how to create a stronger resume. There's also a link to do a mock interview. There's a link to some templates, right? Some people, they want to see how a strong resume looks like. So I did a 0343. I did a 0340. One for program and management and program analyst. And I did one for program management. You can see the entire resume. You can download that. There's a link in the description where you could do that if you're interested in that. Also, please click like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate everyone for coming. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great weekend. Have a great Sunday. Bye-bye.